Welcome back, guys. I've been having this thought about doing a podcast on just marriage, loving your wife. So this is definitely for more a guy episode, but younger guys especially, because this is something I feel like I really didn't have anybody to talk to about before I got married. I just kind of had an idea in my head of what I wanted my marriage to look like as far as what I saw from my parents. And I was raised in a home where both parents, they showed a lot of love to each other. They were very vocal about their love to each other in front of us kids. And I just knew I wanted that, but I didn't know what other pieces, I guess, that I was going to want or need for a successful marriage. So for me, I just want to start with reading Ephesians 5:25. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. When I first read that, it really made me think, okay, well, Jesus truly sacrificed himself on the cross for his church. And if I am supposed to bring that level of sacrifice and love to my wife, then I really need to be intentional about growing and figuring this out, because it's a lifelong journey, because at the end of the day, you and your wife are always going to be changing and hopefully growing. Because I always, when I have conversations with some people and they say, they're having issues. My wife she's just changed so much. Well, you've been married for 10 years. I would hope that your wife doesn't act the same way that she did 10 years ago. Hopefully she's grown and you guys are growing together. But it's not just, quote unquote, are you willing to lay down your life for your wife? Most men would say that. But are you willing to lay down your ego, your selfish ways for the woman you love? Because it's not just, would you sacrifice your life, but are you willing to put her needs as something that's a priority for you? And I've had some of these conversations where I'm like, if you're not willing to confidently in your mind not only just sacrifice your life for the woman you love, but sacrifice your ego and your selfish ways, then why even get married? You shouldn't even get married if you're not willing to acknowledge those types of things at all. I mean, there's literally no point in getting married, because it's so important that you have that intentionality in your mind. And it kind of leads me into loving someone is a choice. Of course, there's the attraction, there's the intangible things, but for a long-term relationship, I mean, Hill and I have been together for 15 years. We've been married for 13 and a half, and we've obviously had definitely some ups and downs, but never anything too crazy. I'm very grateful, and I know we're extremely fortunate, because our hard times mostly have been because we run all of our businesses together. We do so much day-to-day stuff together that we have inevitably butt heads at times, but we have learned to, okay, this is your role, this is my role, and there's not as much stuff that's in the middle. That way it kind of prevents the arguing for us. But something I do every day is I intentionally tell myself, I love her, she's my wife, and I choose to love her. Not just I love her because she's my wife, but I choose to love her. And I intentionally say this. I say it out loud sometimes. I say it just in my head. But I make sure that it's something I'm intentionally repeating to myself all the time. And that helps just block out any negativity and distractions that could potentially come our way. And just being intentional about divorce should never be an option. If you are choosing to get married, you and your wife should be on the same page going into it, that divorce is never an option. Of course, there's those special instances where if somebody becomes abusive or something like that, of course. But just because life gets hard, divorce should never be an option. It's just plain and simple. And what I've had to learn over the 13 and a half years we've been married is that as my faith has grown being a man of God and wanting to live a godly life is being intentional about leading my wife the correct ways, not telling her what to do, not being demanding, but leading her and our family in the way that God has it designed. Because as I do that, as I learn that and I grow in that way, and this is going to be a lifelong journey, but she respects me more. She respects my decisions. She doesn't question me. She will follow me because she knows that I'm intentional about the way I'm trying to lead her and our family. And at the end of the day, we both have agreed, and this wasn't something we did at first. We didn't know. We both knew we were hoping to marry somebody that was a Christian, but we had no clue. We were so surface level in our faith in those early years that to truly have the marriage that we wanted, we needed to both be intentional about the foundation of our marriage being rooted in our faith in Jesus. So that, I mean, because at the end of the day, it's just like a house. If it's not built on a firm foundation, what happens when it gets hard? What happens when the storm comes? If you don't have a foundation, any sort of foundation for your house, it's just going to get swept up in the storm. It's the same for your marriage. If you don't have a strong foundation for your marriage, what's going to happen when that first hurdle comes or the extremely hard stuff comes? Because it's going to come no matter what. We have faced a lot of hard things together, but we've always came out the other end stronger, not only in our marriage but in our faith because of it, because we've embraced the fact that we are going to face trials. And as long as we're facing them together and our foundation is in Jesus, it has just been way easier. Those early years, we had a lot of bumps in the road, and it wasn't so easy. We didn't overcome them quite as easily. There were some arguments that didn't even need to be had, but as we've gotten more mature and we have grown more in our faith and we have grown in our marriage, when we face what a lot of people would say is a pretty big trial now, is not such a big trial for us because we know that we're going to pray about it. We're going to work on it together. We're going to try and be intentional about the way we attack the challenge in front of us. And I think that matters so much because at the end of the day, like I said, you're going to face many trials and many challenges in life in general, but especially in marriage, because it's such a special bond. You have to be intentional about growing that bond. So a couple things that I think of before Hill and I, well, especially myself, took that step into being intentional about being what I would say a godly husband. Growing my faith was key, but intentionally reading the Bible every day was a habit that I had to develop and be intentional about doing. Praying more regularly, not just once a day, but throughout the day. Praying with my family. Hill and I started that habit, way before the next thing that I would say has been one of the biggest game changers for Hill and I in our marriage is praying together, me and her, taking time every evening at bed, like when we're in bed, to pray together. But it's so important that I'm the one praying and not her. And that's not a negative thing by any means. Your wife can be the one that prays plenty of times. But when you're trying to intentionally be the leader, I know she wants me to be intentional about being that leader and taking the reins and being the one saying, hey, it's time to pray, and leading the prayer, because that is what we're called to do as men. We are called to be the leader of our household and lead our wives appropriately, and they want us to be the one that leads them in prayer. They want us to be the one that is kind of like their second pastor, if you have a pastor, or leading the kids and whatnot. So that was a huge game changer for Hill and I, and we've only been doing that for probably 4-ish years now of me intentionally, because at first it was uncomfortable. We would pray, a small prayer with the kids every night before bed, but really praying about our marriage, praying about the challenges we're facing, praying about what's going on in our lives, and being more vulnerable, that was new to me, especially just her and I. And I never really had prayed in a group setting, but that kind of lined me up for being able to be more comfortable doing that. So, and then intentionally submitting to Jesus's will and not our will. I've talked about this before. The gym, like this building this gym, is something that's been a dream of Hill's. And it took me a while to figure out that we were actually called to do this as opposed to wanting to do it, because I was like, why would we do this? Why would we risk everything again? But when we realize that it's all God's, it's not ours, we're not really risking anything. We're doing what we're called to do. And Hill and I truly feel like we're called to build this gym and build this community of people that care about their health, care about getting better, care about growing. And that's just something that I've had to grow to do, is laying it all at Jesus' feet and trying to intentionally find out what his will is in each situation and in our lives. And the next thing that we started doing that was a big game changer for us was tithing. We've only been doing that for probably 4-ish years as well. And being intentional about what does it mean to tithe, why tithe. And that's for a whole other episode, but just when you submit to understanding that it's all God's, and we are called to give a tithe to our church to help further ministry. It's just a game changer when you see that those resources at work, and you realize that when you're giving, He's the one taking care of you and providing anyways, but He has provided us in more ways since we have been tithing than before. And it's just, all these things have led to us having a better marriage and being intentional with our marriage. And another thing that has been pivotal in our marriage is working out and exercising and dieting. We do a lot of those things together. We go on diets together. They might not be the same diet, but we are supportive of each other. Or if she's wanting to do some sort of special diet, maybe I don't want to do it, but I'm supportive. I'll change certain things to be supportive. We work out together at times. That one is something that we fall off and on, and it's just because of our crazy schedules. But that's something that we always enjoy doing, is exercising together. Whether that's just going on a walk or actually doing, an intense workout at the gym together. That's just something that has really helped our marriage and has made us stronger, not only physically and mentally, but in our marriage. Intentional date nights. To me, they're non-negotiable. Whether that's just once a month during crazy seasons or it's once a week when you actually don't have too many kid things going on or crazy things going on, but intentionally setting aside time for you guys to go on a date and spend some quality time together. And this has been a big one for me, making sure our kids see our love, see us showing each other love, hugging, kissing, being playful. I just think that's so important because so much is caught, not taught with raising kids. And if they grasp onto, I want a marriage where, we're playful and we show each other love, and there's no doubt in my mind that my parents love each other. Not only do they love each other, but they want to show that love all the time. I think that was one of the best things that I got from my upbringing, from my parents. One of the best lessons that I got. And I'm intentional. And luckily for Hill and I, we don't even have to be intentional about it, because we have grown our marriage so much that it's just natural. But even when it's not natural, for the people out there that maybe it's not natural right now, start making those little habits. Start showing that affection, start saying the thank yous, and just really embracing your wife, and especially in front of your kids, and showing her respect in front of the kids, never disrespecting her, and especially in front of the kids. There's going to be arguments, there's going to be troubles, of course, so just keep those behind closed doors, not in front of the kids, making sure that you're leading them appropriately. and I want to talk a little bit more about the foundational pieces, because for me it's all downhill with starting with that foundation in Jesus. Then after that, the Holy Spirit will work in you and help you guys figure out what it is that you need to be working on. Because that was something Hill and I cannot say that the first 5 to 6, 7 years of our marriage, our foundation was in Jesus. It was probably more in, we're going to work hard, we're going to love each other, we're going to be the best parents we can be. How we are going to do that, we're just going to figure it out, as opposed to praying about it, putting our faith in Jesus, relying on him, and being more intentional about seeking his help instead of thinking we could just do it on our own. So those are things that a lot of those things are pieces of advice that I wish I would have gotten when I was getting married or early in our marriage. I mean, heck, for me, I mean, Hill and I, we went on after our first date, I told my brother and my cousin that that's the girl I'm going to marry. Like, that's how sure I was after one date. And then, 3.5 months later, we're engaged, and then we're married the next year. It's like we still needed to learn each other in aspects. And then we're opening a business 3 months later, and then she's pregnant with Kins, and I felt like going 100 miles an hour. And if we didn't take the time to stop and actually, okay, how are we going to actually do this and make this feasible? How are we going to have the marriage like that we think we want? We just don't know what that really looks like, other than we want to love each other. So figuring out what that actually looked like, growing in our faith together and getting a foundation, that's what's led us to the point we are now, where when we face the big challenges, we just don't get worried. We just know that God is going to provide, God is going to take care of us, and as long as we both are intentional about that, nothing can stand in our way.
So, question for you. What, in this day and age, we see a lot of, I think, couples starting, whether it's high school, whatever that may be, they date for 2-3 years, and a lot of people are getting married a lot younger, I think, right now. And you see a lot of people graduating high school, and then, year to 2 years, whatever that may be, go and get married. What would your advice be to those guys, or to those people that are looking to, graduate high school, move to the next step in their relationship, but really haven't experienced, life on their own yet? And, it's a big step to just go get married right out of high school without, really having experienced much on your own, or much of really anything besides under your parents' roof.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so for me, at least, I moved out when I was 18. So when Hill and I got together at 21, and Hill moved basically out when she was 18, went to college, and actually had to pay her own way and everything. So we both had life experience. That was something that drew me to her, was the fact that she worked multiple jobs. She paid her own way for everything. She paid for her own vehicle. Work was not, that was one of the big things that attracted me to her initially, was work was not, she was a hard worker, still is a hard worker. To me, that's a non-negotiable. In my mind, I'm a hard worker. I'll put in the hours. I'll work 100 hours a week. I will grind. I always knew I wanted a partner that had that same mentality. But luckily for me, she has that balance of, yes, I will grind when we need to, but I also want us to pump the brakes and relax and enjoy life at the same time when we need to. So she's a great balance for me. But if you haven't experienced that stuff, I think those are definitely conversations you need to have. And those are similar conversations Hill and I still had early on. It was, okay, well, obviously, like, to get the big ones out of the way, do you want to have kids? How many are you hoping to have? Because that's important. I feel like you need to be upfront with that. How are we going to manage our money? Because that's a big one that I see a lot of young couples struggle with. Are you going to just pool your money together? Or are you going to have a joint account you all put the same amount in and have separate accounts? How are you going to manage your money? Or is it going to be you pay for this bill, I pay for this bill? Have those conversations. How are you comfortable with managing money? And at the end of the day, biblically speaking, the man should be leading that role. Not in a negative way by any means, in a constructive way of we are going to be good stewards of our finances. And just understanding like what are your goals, and the other person understanding what your goal, what each other's goals are. I think that's something that you really need to have discussions about. I mean, Hill and I had those discussions. What are your goals? Here are my goals. How do you see this working in? And we made adjustments to be able to work together to achieve each other's goals, because at the end of the day, that's what you're going to need. You're going to need a supportive spouse, especially if you're a high performer that wants to achieve big things. You're going to need a supportive spouse that is, whether they're in the business with you or not, is supportive and understands when you have to work the 18 hours in a day and understands, hey, I'll take care of this and that to help you out. But I think it all comes down to having those conversations. And once again, I wish I would have known, Hill and I both wish we would have known this when we first got married, was what is our foundation going to be? What are we going to lean on when times get hard? Because luckily our love was strong enough organically, and we had faith in Jesus those first 6 or 7 years. But once we made that transition of truly intentionally having a foundation in Jesus, it was a complete game changer for us. And we'll take any challenge on that comes our way.